Hi, and welcome to Girls Lunch, your mealtime companion, where we talk about food, gender, sexuality, and where everyone is welcome.
I'm Julia Andreas.
I'm Nicole Hilton.
And Nicole, close your eyes.
They're closed.
Now think of cake. What do you see in your mind's eye?
I see a round, it's not actually round, it's a cylinder, like a short cylinder, with frosting, perhaps vanilla, and some little cherries on top, and it's on a pedestal. Is that right?
Beautiful, beautiful. That is like exactly what I wanted.
The platonic ideal.
So in our last episode, Nicole, you and I swore a blood oath to not do a two-part episode under any means. And I thought, it's my turn next time. I'll just do cake. That's easy. Except I forgot that there were like thousands of different types of cake.
Yeah.
And that, quote, cake is like very loose general term for like a lot of things. And so I was just like, I'm not going to make it a two-part. To be clear, this is not a two-parter. This is a single episode.
Okay, good.
But like before we talk about what the episode is about, I need to have a very long disclaimer about what this episode is not about. This episode will not be about babka, bûche de Noël, and other roll cakes, bundt cakes, brownies and blondies, cake pops, cheesecake, lava cake, coffee cake, cupcakes, because that's a whole other episode, danishes and other pastries, gayettes, gâteaux, and torts, fruitcakes, kolaches, kuchen, and kugelhopfs, pavlova's pineapple and pound cake, and
You're doing so well.
Pavlova's pineapple and pound cakes, pancakes, Twinkies and Hostess cakes, pumpkin banana zucchini bread, or any sort of muffin, which is just a cake in disguise.
Wow.
None of those. We will not be touching any of those with our cake poll in this episode.
I love that this is in alphabetical order also.
Thank you.
It makes me deeply happy, deeply satisfying. We already talked about chocolate lava cake anyway, so.
It's true. We can cross that one off. So yeah, I was just like, haha, what is cake? And then people were like, cake can be all of these things.
Cake is a state of mind and also a band.
It's true. And I'm like, I don't have that much time. I can't do a five-parter on cakes. So in this episode, I really wanted to answer two questions. First question is, what is cake? And by cake, I mean the image that Nicole just described, the image we see in our brains when we think of cake, the emoji of cake, wedding cakes, birthday cakes, cake mixes, round, multi-layered cakes with frosting or icing in between layers, and icing like surrounding the cake or frosting surrounding the cake.
Okay.
So what is cake? The earliest idea of like a cake is found in Neolithic lake villages in Switzerland.
Oh.
And what they found were like just crushed grain formed into flat rounds that had been moistened and cooked. So when we think of early cakes, we bring to mind images of like flat, compacted, circular somethings that
Right.
is probably edible, like rice cakes, or less edible, like cattle cakes.
Yeah, which, if you didn't know, is just like food for cows that has been compacted down, kind of like a pellet.
So like, a flat, round cake of something.
Right.
You can have like a cake of soap, So like it can be like a descriptive term as well as a noun.
Sure.
So for this episode, I read a bunch of books, which is why it took 2 months. In one of them, Cake, A Global History, author Nicola Humble quotes, "Cake covered so wide a range of eating in antiquity that the same name might be applied to a rustic confection as a rich man's tidbit, and the same name offered to luxurious Persian desserts as to a religious offering." So, you can have things like moon cakes as a religious offering in a lot of Chinese history and culture. You could have cakes like I listed that we're not talking about, like pavlovas and things, as those fancier desserts. Or you could have like a simple cake that is just like oatmeal. So like cake can mean a lot of things.
Cake is everything and nothing.
Exactly. Like I listed, like there's just thousands of varietals of like what cake could be throughout culture and history. And like I feel like the list above that I gave, that I almost pokey wrapped there for a second,
yeah.
was like maybe
yeah.
maybe like 5% of all possible cakes. So, like, for a long, long time, cake was essentially a type of bread, like a sweeter bread. Both bread and cake were, like, yeasted and made with a refined grain of some sort, with nuts or other fillings, or, like, maybe some honey, stuff like that. But we don't really start to see modern cakes, like, you know, the Platonic ideal of cake, until around the 17th century. And there's not, like, of course, one moment that we can define, like, that's cake. But instead, it is, like, a slow progression of technology changing and more available resources that allow people to bake more complex things.
Right.
So some of the technological advances were more reliable ovens. And by that, I mean ovens with doors.
Oh, yeah. That's huge.
So you could, like, keep the heat in and, like, more regular and even. And then also, like, food molds. So, you know, to make a round cake, you need a round pan. And that didn't really come around until the mid-17th century with cake hoops.
Ooh.
And I have a picture for you of, like, what the modern equivalent of a cake hoop is. It's just, like, a ring mold. But what I'm imagining that they probably had back then were kind of like cross-stitch hoops.
Yeah.
That were just like really thick, you know, like tall. And those would be placed on baking trays to like contain the cake and give it its shape. Material-wise, they could be made out of like wood or metal or even paper, but I don't know how well that would hold up in an oven.
Yeah, I'm thinking they had so many hoops around at that point in history. I mean, you talk about like, you know, barrels. Is it so bold to be thinking about like hoop skirts? And dare I say, you know, everybody at this point in history was playing hoop and stick.
God, they were so much hoop.
Little Timmy, I gotta borrow your hoop so that we can make a cake for your sister's birthday.
I need a big old cake.
Yep.
Yeah, you're right. A very hoop-centric time. In terms of, like, increased availability of certain resources, we start to get more availability of, like, refined white sugar in sort of, like, Europe and Britain and places like that, which you need to make, like, not only a fluffier cake, but also icing and frosting. Like, that sugar needs to be ground, like, super, super fine to get that crust-like shiny exterior of, like, icing. And the first icings were made of, like, egg whites and sugar and an added flavor, and these were usually boiled together, then poured over the cake like a glaze. And the cake would then, they would actually, like, put it back in the oven to set the frosting, like, to set the egg whites, and it would emerge with a hard, shiny shell looking like a pond of ice.
Ooh.
Hence the icing.
Okay. I get it.
But we do the same with, like, meringues and stuff, so it does make sense. Like, you know, have the eggs set a bit. You know, like I said, cakes were yeasted at this point because we didn't have chemical leaveners. So, like, you know, to make the cake rise, you needed either yeast or, like, a whole bunch of eggs and egg whites. I play this game a lot with my daughter, Patty Cake.
Yes.
She's only 10 months, so it's more of, like, me playing the game at her. But
yeah.
Patty Cake, baker's man, bake me a cake as fast as you can. Rolling a cake, kneading a cake. Those are not things we do with cakes today.
That's true.
But that was something that you would have to do with like a cake back then because it was actually closer to bread. And the main switch from bread to cake is kind of when we stopped using yeast to make them rise and started using like eggs and egg whites, like I mentioned, to actually make like a fluffier, less breadier sort of crumb. And then, you know, late 1700s, 1790, we start to get chemical leaveners. They're way older than we would think they are, right? But we had pearl ash, which was potassium carbonate, which was made out of wood ash, and that was used to make, quote, quick breads and cakes. So, you know, you didn't have to wait for the yeast to rise these things. Like, it would rise way faster. They weren't tasty, though.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we made other things later.
Chemical leaveners had a rough start, for sure.
They did.
Took them a little while to iron out all the kinks in this.
So, you know, like around 60 years later, in 1850, we get true baking powder, which is cream of tartar and acid and bicarbonate of soda, baking soda, combined with like a little bit of like cornstarch to keep it separated and dry. And with baking powder, you could have soft, spongy cakes without a ton of eggs. And this is where we can kind of see, like, this is cake. you know, and also around this time, we have Queen Victoria's wedding cake.
Ah, yes.
And so, you know, we really get cakes at the time. Like, this is like the moment of cake. Highly decorated, incredibly intricate, many layers of cake. Cake was super popular in Victorian times.
Yeah. I mean, Queen Victoria was herself so popular. Everybody really loved to emulate her and whatever she was up to. She had like a super elaborate wedding cake, right? That you said was like multi-tiers. And did she have a live bird on it? I'm just kidding.
I think like part of her cake still exists today or something. It's crazy. Like preserved. But yeah, it was a giant, insane cake. And like in the Victorian times, like not only is cake becoming an art form, but it's like also increasingly popular because it is like unfussy and like pretty easy to make compared to like torts, which, you know, don't use any flour usually, or like fancy French cakes, which like are very heavy in dairy and butter and would last maybe like a day.
Right, because we don't have refrigeration yet.
Yeah. But like, you know, like the cake we think of is mostly like flour and sugar. It lasts longer than a day. And with the rise of like coffee houses at the time, cakes became like a cup of coffee's constant companion, you know, right? You want your nice little cup of coffee and like a little sweet little bite to eat next to it. And I can totally see why people were like, this is fantastic. I need more of this.
Definitely took me a long time as a kid to figure out that coffee cake did not have coffee in it. It's just like, this is a cake that is good to have with coffee. There's no coffee in it. Yeah.
That took me forever too. I was just like, I don't want coffee in my cake.
Yeah.
Joke's on me. I drink like 4 cups of coffee a day now. So, in terms of flavors, this is kind of a tangent, but I thought it was interesting. It doesn't seem like red velvet as a cake flavor really comes on the scene until like about the 1920s with like experimentations with chemical leavenings and like reactions. I saw this little quote from Harold McGee on Food and Cooking, The Science and Lore of the Kitchen, that like chemical leavenings have effects on both flavor and color. Browning reactions are enhanced. Chocolate turns reddish, and blueberries turn green.
Fun.
And so, if you've ever wondered like what flavor is red velvet, it's just chocolate with red food coloring.
Yeah.
It's just chocolate with red food coloring.
That was something else that also took me a while to realize, was just that red velvet cake is not, it's just a chocolate cake that, I mean, nowadays we just use food dye to make it like especially red.
Yeah, but before it was just kind of like this muted brownish red due to the reactions between cocoa powder and baking soda, which is cool.
Chemistry. I think it's interesting that they say blueberries turn green because like I still have the issue every so often, like if I'm making blueberry muffins or something and then I don't fold them like just correctly and I maybe squish one a little bit, or there's one that like is a little squishy and then it turns the rest of the batter like purple.
Yes.
So not green, but purple.
I love a blueberry muffin.
Oh, me too.
But I can't start on muffins.
No.
I clearly stated this was not about muffins.
Muffins are out of scope.
So also, I think that an important era for the cake in history is the pursuit of the perfect boxed cake mix. Nicole, you've run into cake mixes. Have you used cake mixes?
Yeah, I'm an American. Of course I have.
Do you have like a specific brand of cake mix that you like to use?
I'm pretty brand agnostic. I think the big ones here in the U.S. are Duncan Hines, Pillsbury, and Betty Crocker. Those are the ones that I usually see on my grocery store shelves. I do think that they provide a pretty good cake, you know?
Yeah, I was gonna ask, do you think that like box cake mixes are better or worse than like homemade cakes? They're easier for sure.
They're definitely easier, and honestly, I feel like, I mean, I do like to make cakes from scratch, especially if it's like someone's birthday or something like that, and I am viewing the cake as like the present. I made the wedding cake for my brother-in-law and sister-in-law's wedding, so obviously I did not use a box cake mix for that. I mean, if I'm just like at home, or if it's just like, hey, I kind of feel like some cake or some cupcakes, I do usually keep, you know, a box or two of cake mix in the cabinet for such instances. And I think it's fine, you know? I think it tastes like pretty good. Certainly, like, there's a lot less effort. It's very replicable, you know? You don't have to worry as much about, there's a lot less room for error.
Yeah, I don't use cake mixes very often, but that's more a function of like a lot of them have milk powder in them.
Yeah, that's fair.
And so I'm just like, I can't use this.
Yeah.
Which is like so sad for me in pancake mixes because I'm always like in the mood for a pancake.
Yeah.
But this isn't about pancakes either.
Nope. Also out of scope.
So yeah, I think like cake mixes, like boxed cake mixes, are pretty ubiquitous in the States. And I will say I did take out a tangent about Duncan Hines because we just don't have time.
I think he's his own episode.
He is, in fact, his own episode. But, you know, in the history of like boxed cake mixes, like we first kind of have to start with the boxed custard powders and Jell-O that appeared in the late 1800s and sort of like the industrialized era where, you know, convenience foods were a marvel of modern engineering. And thanks to home economists, my girls, they allowed women to make finicky or more time-consuming foods faster and theoretically more consistency. I don't know if you've ever tried to work with just straight gelatin, not like in Jell-O boxes or things like that.
Not really.
It's finicky, man. Like you could mess up your whole recipe, just like the gelatin did dissolve right or something. So with the mixes, they were supposed to be more, like you said, stable and like replicable and like standardized. And packaged cake mixes started appearing in the 1920s with O. Duff and Sons, which was originally a molasses company. And they made the first, quote, quick mix boxed cake mix. And it was fairly successful, and so many other well-known food companies started following this trend, including Pillsbury and our old friend, OGs will remember, the Donut Corporation.
Oh.
I was reading this and I was like, oh my god, it's them. Listen to our donut episode if you want more context.
Real ones will remember.
However, like these cake mixes, unlike the ones of today, were not very popular in a lot of other ways because of spoilage issues and being incredibly unreliable. So it was like a great opportunity in a market, but it wasn't like actually fulfilling its like potential to like make income and revenue for these companies because like they were using powdered eggs and powdered milk that could spoil really easily, and like they didn't have at this time the plastic bags to seal them in.
Right. You're probably just putting it in a cardboard box, I would think. Or maybe a tin?
I think at this point just a cardboard box.
Yeah.
And you didn't really have like the scales and the measuring machines that you can have today to like make things like incredibly precise. So there was like this balancing act that home cooks, aka just women, were faced with at home with these box mixes where it's like, you know, it's the 20s, it's the 30s, we're rolling into this modern convenience time, and you kind of had to balance like this continuation of like technological progress with traditional expectations. So, and this is very true today, if something appears too simple and easy, we become suspicious of it and we think it's like not as good for you since it was not made with the time or effort we expect something like that to make.
Yep.
So for instance, like a lasagna, like, right, if you get like a frozen lasagna, there's like this, I don't know about that. Like, isn't that
what did
like,
they put in it?
What are they putting? Isn't that like ultra processed or something? It's just a lasagna, dude.
Yeah.
It's got the same ingredients that like the lasagna you have at home does, but it's like you're not putting in the effort and the time to actually make it, so it's not as good for you.
Yeah. Not to mention, and I might be previewing, I don't know what you have in store for us in part two, or not part two of the episode, after the food fact of the day, the women's portion of the program, where there's definitely expectations on you, the homemaker, that, I mean, we talked about this in episode 1, baby, you know, the expectation that like, well, you are the wife and mother, so you need to be giving it your absolute all for your family. You got to be grinding that wheat. You got to be making that bread from scratch. If you don't make it from scratch, I don't think you actually love your children, you know? And I think that is true. I mean, honestly, I was even just parroting this like 5 minutes ago, you know, where I said, like, if it's for a special occasion, like, I need to make it from scratch. But if it's just for me, for casual use, then a box mix is okay, you know? there's some expectation that like labor and the amount of time, perhaps because we live in a society that is like obsessed with saving time and measuring time and being as productive as possible, that indicates like your care and level of attention to something. And if you are not doing that, if you are using a box mix and doing the faster thing, then that must mean you do not care as much.
Yeah, that's so true for like all aspects of our modern life outside of just cooking. I was just thinking about like cards, right? Where it's like, there's like sending an e-card, there's sending a pre-made card, there's sending a pre-made card with a little note that you hand wrote in it, and then there's like painting your own card and sending it. And there's just like, you know, the amount of time and effort, like if you had a little graph, right? It's like time and effort and then perceived love.
Yeah.
Right? Where it's like the more time and effort you put into something, the more like perceived love there is in that thing. And it's like, that's not necessarily true, especially if you're like trying to feed your family every day. I think there can be just as much love in a homemade cake as there could be in a box quick cake, because in the end you're still getting cake.
Yeah. And for some people that also is cultural as well. And also, not to mention that like there's degrees of that, right? Like depending on your family and also usually your class background, like your parent taking the time to make a cake from a box may even be like, oh wow, that demonstrate like instead of buying a cake at the grocery store already pre-made, like might indicate to you like, oh gosh, they really care, you know, or like, oh, they went to the trouble, you know.
Yeah. No, but I think that's a good point of like,
everything's a sliding scale.
There's no right answer. Do what you want.
Yeah. You have free will.
Yeah, we're here and we give you permission to do whatever you want. Of course, if we are moving into post-war America and convenience foods and cake mixes, of course Betty Crocker is there. But she is her whole own episode.
Yep.
So for now, she just gets a little cameo.
She might also be on the list already.
She's on the list. Yeah, 110%.
She's on the fucking list, let me tell you. She's on a list.
She's on our list.
The FBI man in the computer knows about her.
So it's thanks to old BC that cake mixes went from like a cheat that maybe like a housewife or home cook kind of like sneaks in to like, you know, get that cake out just in time for her husband's big office party, to a pantry staple that, like you, Nicole, most people have a cake mix in their pantry just in case they need to whip one out for a little snacky.
Emergency cake.
And how did she do this, you may ask? Well, the old American tradition of marketing, baby.
Ah, yes. Yes, of course. We should have known.
So, Nicole, I have a report for you from Consumer Reports published in 1953 that kind of identifies the shift in thinking around cake mixes.
Okay, so from Consumer Reports, 1953. Not so very long ago, the housewife who went to the bakery store to get her family's dessert, instead of producing it from her own oven, was looked at askance by her more industrious neighbors. Today, there seems to be at least a fair prospect that the situation will be reversed, for the grocery store shelves are replete with ready-mix cake packages in great variety, and the description of their preparation sounds so simple as to make a trip to the bakery store, by comparison, a major chore. She flipped that Uno reverse card on him.
She did. And, of course, like, God, I would love to talk about Betty Crocker.
But there's a lot there.
Do you think we could do Betty Crocker in one episode? I don't even know if we could do Betty Crocker in one episode.
Challenge. Betty Crocker speed run. Any percent.
Yeah, I know. Any percent. I do have one tangent that I do need to tell you about. Mm-hmm. And that is the high altitude baking.
Ooh.
And so, like, if you get a box mix, especially if you live out here in Montana or where you were in Flagstaff or in Colorado, places that have really high elevation, there's always a little part on the back that's like, if you're like high altitude baking, like make these adjustments.
Had to do this all the time.
But how did people know how to make those adjustments?
They tested everything in Denver at the Sky Dome. They made cake for Peyton Manning and the Denver Broncos. I don't know.
Yes, you're absolutely correct. I'll just keep scrolling through my notes.
I knew it.
No, actually, they created a giant pressurized kitchen.
Even better.
They baked cakes in a giant pressurized kitchen called like the Flying Kitchen.
Whoa.
That, quote, went up 7,000 feet without leaving the ground.
Huh.
So this kitchen was a pressure chamber used by the U.S. Army Air Force in Minnesota. And for them, it was like to conduct altitude tests on like people.
Yeah.
For like World War II.
Yeah, make sure you don't get altitude sickness.
Yeah. And then like the pressure chamber was used by like a bunch of home economists were like, can we use this to test high altitude baking? And they were like, oh my God, yeah. So Miss Mary Kimball and her crew of other home economists took to the pressure chamber to bake some cakes. I think it's just so funny, the visual of like, you walk into a pressure chamber and it's got like oxygen masks and like earphones and microphones and like gauges. And they had like a little electric stove and like steel tanks like anchored horizontally and stuff. So like it was definitely like not a kitchen. It was definitely like a pressure chamber air vault from the military. We just have these ladies and they're like, we're doing science, man. We're here to do science.
I think a lot about how many, and this is not a unique observation, but like the amount of technological innovation we have that comes from the U.S. military. I don't mean that to sound like the military is great. I have a lot of mixed feelings about the U.S. military, but I've heard it said before that like most technological innovations are like, if you were to ask yourself like, how did we get whatever technology? It's either like the military or pornography.
Yep.
And one of those two is a large contributor to how we have whatever technology we have.
That is so true.
I'm also wondering, like, of the cadets and the staff sergeants and everybody else on base, like when these gals showed up for their scientific experiment to bake their cakes, did they have thoughts about that? Like, were they just like, why are these ladies here? Or, you know what I mean?
They might have been outside, like, do I get a cake?
Yeah, that's true.
That'd be me, man. I'd be outside like, do I get some?
You know, that actually probably was a mutually beneficial relationship because, I mean, you know, they had to test a lot of them. And I'm sure there were some hungry GIs around who would be more than happy to sample.
Yeah. And so they baked a control cake on the ground. So as the ascent was made, ascent in quotes because they didn't actually leave the ground, at like 1,000 feet a minute, the pressure was dropping just as rapidly. So when they reached like 7,000 feet, they made the cake and they, you know, weighed and measured and baked it. And they were up there for like 4 hours each time they were testing it. And they tested it like a bunch. They made like 200 cakes in like 64 flights.
Where did they put them all?
I guess the people at the base ate them, I'm hoping.
Just get put out in the mess hall. Free cake.
And there's this really cute quote from the article. When the test cake came out of the oven, Miss Kimball seized a microphone to announce the baking mission completed and the oven ready to land.
Oh, I like that.
So if you want to bake a cake on top of a 29,000-foot Mount Everest, don't guess at the recipe. Try it in a pressure chamber first. This is from the New York Times in 1949. Super cute, super fun little tangent. I just thought it was fun.
That's so cool.
Home economists doing science.
They're science.
Behind everything. They're behind everything.
The only thing that I sometimes ran into was like when I was making a box cake mix or something, it would say like, if you live at 5,000 feet, do this. But Flagstaff, which is where I lived, was at 7,000 feet. And there were times, I definitely remember there's at least a couple of times where I might not have been making cake mix. I might have been making something else, some other mix. And they were like, above 7,000 feet, don't make this. And I'm like, well, I'm going to.
Why do you sell it?
Yeah. Why do you sell it up here also? Or they'll just be like, you know, not tested for above, which is basically just like, you're on your own. I don't know.
All right. So now that we've had our fun tangent, shall we go learn about our food fact of the day?
Now that we've had one fun tangent, what if we had another fun tangent?
It's time for fun tangent.
2! Okay, let's go.
I'm staring at the notes and I noticed that there is nothing written down for the fun food fact of the day.
Yes.
So I'm suspecting that we're going to have a fun game show moment.
You'd be right, Julia, because we are going to play a game.
Yay!
I had like several different things I was looking into of like, maybe this for food fact, maybe this for food fact. And they just kept coming up like, no, this is nothing. This is nothing. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to pull off my shelf a game we have not played in a long time, which is I pulled down my copy.
Oh my God.
Of Popped Culture, A Social History of Popcorn in America by Andrew F. Smith. And we are going to play Truth or Pure Poppycock.
Oh my God.
Which I think we have only played once before.
Only once.
I think.
Oh my God. I'm so excited.
I don't remember the original episode that we did this in, but this is a game that I made up based on, as I said, Andrew F. Smith's Popped Culture, A Social History of Popcorn in America, which is a book about popcorn. It is what it sounds like. The back chapter, or the back half of the book, I guess, is just like old-timey recipes that use popcorn. And a lot of them, as old-timey recipes tend to be, are really unhinged. So the rules of this game are that I will give Julia the name of a dish that includes popcorn as an ingredient. Popcorn is somehow involved in this recipe in some way. And Julia has to decide whether the dish is real or whether it is pure poppycock, which means I made it up and it's fake. If the dish is real, Julia can guess how popcorn is used in the recipe for a bonus point.
I think last time I did really bad.
Yeah, I think this proved to be
redeem myself.
This proved to be harder than we thought. Okay, round 1. We have 4 rounds, and then there's going to be a freebie at the end because I know that you would be able to guess it, but I really wanted to read it on air. Okay, round 1. Brandied popcorn.
Brandied popcorn.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is true.
It is pure poppycock. No.
God dang it. I'm going to get all of these wrong.
No. Okay. That's only 1. All right, round 2. Popcorn sandwiches.
Popcorn sandwiches. I guess I can't ask for like a general like time period, can I?
I will say that most of the recipes that I'm pulling from are written by this one woman, God bless her. I'll look at her name in a second, that wrote this one cookbook in, I think it's like 1914, 1919, something like that.
Okay. Then I'm going to say this one's true.
Okay. Ding, ding, ding. This one is
Yay!
real. Okay, so, and I think actually most of the recipes that I'm going to read today are from Mary Hamilton Talbott's Popcorn Recipes.
I knew her name was Mary. I remember her name was Mary.
Ah, okay. Published in 1916. I think what this is like, there used to be this company called like Nelson's Popcorn. And so all of her recipes are basically like, here's how to use Nelson's popcorn in this. Here's how to use Nelson's popcorn in this,
Classic.
In the way that like when even today, like you get a can of soup and there's like, hey, you could make cool pork chops with this soup or whatever on the side of the can.
All right. Can I guess where the popcorn was used?
Yes, please guess.
Like the modern day application of chips in a sandwich. So you have like the bread, but then you have popcorn as like a layer of crunch, and then you have like the rest of your sandwich.
Okay. Now there actually are quite a few popcorn sandwiches in here. So let me look. So there is one recipe that is like the popcorn is the bread basically. Oh. So you like it says make popcorn in sheets 3/8 or 1/2 inches thick. And then between 2 sheets, put peanut butter, whole raisins, etc. The particular likes of your neighborhood may be catered to by the filling you put into these sandwiches.
How do your popcorn bread stay together, though?
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know how you make it in a sheet. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm thinking of like when you make popcorn balls, you use like corn syrup and that type of thing to get it. So I'm like, is it like that? But that's wild.
I have no idea. That is wild.
So there's that where like you use it as bread. There are other ones that are more savory, which is like there's one in here that has sardines and tomato juice.
Huh?
Yeah. And there's another one where you make a paste of cream cheese and popcorn. A lot of these is like you pop the popcorn and then you grind it up and then it's just sort of like corn powder, I guess. It truly is just like Miss Talbot was just like, how can I get popcorn in there? How can I get it in? Like in the way that
Just throw it in there.
In the way that suburban moms are like, I've got to get my kids to eat more vegetables. How can I sneak vegetables into everything? It's that.
How can I sneak more popcorn into my child's meals? They're not getting their daily, like, 2 pounds of popcorn. I gotta catch up.
And then there are some sweeter sandwiches with, like, cream cheese, raisins, chopped figs. So there's that. So that's sandwiches. So you're one for, you got a 50% accuracy so far.
All right.
Can only go up from here. I mean, I guess it could go down
I think I can go down.
Well, okay. The next one is popcorn soup. Soup.
Absolutely true. Mary would be throwing popcorn into soup.
You know that dirty dog had
That
to get
girl
some
crazy.
Yep. Okay. So again, there are like multiple soups here. So do you have ideas about what Mary Hamilton Talbot or other folks in this movie?
I have a couple of ideas. One is just popping popcorn and then literally throwing it into a soup.
Okay.
Another one I can see as like you pop the popcorn and then you like blend it to make like a thick soup.
Yeah.
Kind of like hominy. Yeah, those are my 2 ideas.
Okay, so Good Housekeeping does say, when we serve corn chowder, we use popped corn with it in place of crackers. It is a pleasing novelty. So that's sort of what you're talking about. There is another one in here that is like, if you've ever had like chicken and dumplings, where like you make the like dumpling biscuit mix and then you kind of just like plop it into the soup mix and then you just have like a ball in there. There's one in here where you basically do that. It's called Popcorn Balls for Clear Soup.
I don't like that very much.
The one that I would like to read by our girl Mary Hamilton Talbot,
My girl,
is just called Soup. It's just called Soup. A very delicious soup may be made by cooking a can of peas in a quart of milk until soft, press through a sieve to remove outer covering of peas, add a tablespoonful of onion juice, a tablespoonful of butter, pepper and salt to taste, and a good handful of Nelson's corn. When popped, mixed with a few breadcrumbs. After this has cooked up well, serve and add a teaspoonful of whole popped grains to each plateful of soup. Corn may be used instead of the peas, and an equally good soup will result. The thing that I love about this one is how she says, like, start with peas, okay? Like, this is mainly a pea soup. And then at the end, she's like, you could also just use corn. Like, I don't even, what if it was just corn all the way down?
Go all in. Just go all in on
corn.
corn.
You don't even need
All in
those
on
peas.
Corn. God, I don't like that soup at all.
No. There's some where they talk about more of like a corn chowder or like it's, like a thicker soup. And they also say you can use it as an accompaniment or garnish.
I knew that girl was just tossing popcorn straight into a soup.
Getting wild with it. Okay. Number 4. This is the last one, and then we'll have the freebie.
Okay.
Popcorn salad.
Poppycock.
It's real.
Gasp.
It's real.
Are they just throwing popcorn on a salad in place of croutons?
No, Julia, it's much worse.
Oh no, are they jelloing it? Are they putting popcorn in jello?
I'm looking. I don't think so. I don't see any... not to say that you couldn't do it like that, but I think the way that you and I think about popcorn is like the whole popped corn, right? That like you would get at the movies. Mary Hamilton Talbott understands popcorn at like a molecular level that we simply cannot comprehend, where she's like, you've got to pop it, you've got to grind it down until it's basically nothing. You turn it into a paste. You turn it into bread. You know what I mean? Like she's next level. Like they must have contracted this woman like, you have to have 100 recipes in this cookbook or we're not going to pay you. Like that's the only thing I can think of.
Sold her soul to the popcorn devil.
Yeah. This actually is one sentence. This is a one sentence recipe and it will devastate you.
Oh God.
Mary Hamilton Talbott. And again, this one is just called salad. It's not popcorn. It's just called salad. I haven't read it yet, but I am prepared to think that I wish that this was a visual medium. Cut bananas into halves.
No.
Scoop out the centers of each and fill with Nelson's corn after it is popped and ground. And serve on lettuce with mayonnaise dressing.
Mary. Girl, we need to talk.
Are you
we gotta
okay?
talk about some things. Are you good?
I think you're being held against your will. Like,
were you possessed by a popcorn spirit?
I don't
like,
know.
what is happening?
That Nelson's popcorn money had to be good, I guess. I don't know. Yeah, so this is bananas with like ground popcorn in it, which okay. And the thing that gets me is like, and serve on lettuce with mayonnaise
serve on
dressing.
lettuce with mayonnaise.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if like mayonnaise dressing is like some like type of dressing, like mayonnaise based, but like either way, not good.
I could make this actually right now.
Yeah.
I have all the ingredients.
I don't think you should. I don't think that's what God wants for you or any of us.
But I hear the popcorn devil whispering in my ear. Make it. You have everything you need.
So the last one, I knew that you would obviously like guess this because it has a very distinct name. But I wanted to read it because it is in verse. It's like a recipe written out that rhymes, which is wild.
Excuse me?
So this one, we're going to cut Mary some slack. This is from Charlotte Brewster Jordan from 1909. And this is called A Popcorn Frolic for Halloween. And the title of this dish is, these are called Hunky Dories. The way you'd say, like, everything's hunky dory.
Oh my God.
So, a popcorn frolic for Halloween. Hopefully I can get the rhythm and meter right here. First, grate a cake of chocolate sweet into a dish which stands in pan of boiling water near. When melting, it demands a spoonful of the best rich cream, then quickly in it beat 2 cups of freshly popped white corn and cup of pecan meat. Stir briskly with a fork until the syrup covers all. Dip out on sheets of paper waxed and dry the nuggets small.
Delicious.
Yeah, it's just like a little treat. I mean, I think it makes sense as for Halloween. Like, this kind of makes me think of, like, back in the olden days before we were all afraid of, like, razor blades and apples and drugs being injected into candy and had to have everything, like, pre-wrapped and pre-made back in the day when, like, you know, your neighbors would, like, actually make treats and hand them out on Halloween. Mm-hmm. I'm like, this is nice.
I heard the razor blades in apples as, like, afraid of razor blades and apples. Just, like, fear of apples.
They're both reasonable things to be afraid of. If you're a doctor, especially, they hate those things.
I know. I would eat that. I would eat the Hunky Dories. 110%.
Yeah, I mean, it's chocolate.
And pecans and...
Yeah, pecans and popcorn. And they just, like,
sugar.
are, firmed up in a little snack. A little treat.
Yeah. Sounds delicious.
All right. That's our game. Thank you, Julia, for playing.
Again, I think I only got a 50%.
You did.
So.
Yeah.
I did get at least 2 right.
Yeah.
And I was not possessed by the popcorn devil this time.
Really?
So.
We all were winners because we got to hear Mary Hamilton Talbott and her wild, wild nonsense.
Oh, Mary. Okay, so now that we have explored all the wonders of popcorn.
Its many uses.
You ready to get wiggy with it?
Yes. Let's learn.
The first question I wanted to answer in this episode was, what is cake? And to answer that question, I will sum it up as cake. We were joking about this earlier. Cake is whatever we want it to be.
Whoa. I told you, cake is everything. Cake is nothing.
Cake is everything, cake is nothing. Humble writes in their book. Actually, I'm going to have you read this.
Okay. Nicola Humble writes, they join the many other cake ideas that flesh out our sense of what cake is. As much an idea as a reality suggested by the sheer number of such creations, the thousands of internet pages given up to knitted cakes, crocheted cakes, cakes in clay, and Lego, and basket work, representing kitsch and nostalgia, femininity and childhood, manufacture and homecraft, tradition and innovation. They speak to us of many things cake has been and yet to be.
So essentially what Humble is saying is that cake is a symbol. It has surpassed sort of like a object, and it is now a symbol. You can put meaning onto it, and even contradictory meanings, sort of like manufacture and homecraft and tradition and innovation. You know, a cake can symbolize whatever you want it to symbolize.
A cake can contain multitudes.
The cake contains layers, if you will.
Oh, yeah. Chocolate, maybe.
Yeah, cake is a symbol. It can symbolize whatever we want. So if you could continue with another quote from Humble.
Sure. So she writes, if the modern cake has found new forms and functions as it has traveled around the globe, it has also accrued layers of narrative and symbolism. Cakes repeatedly become objects of folklore. They get famous, inspiring legends and lawsuits and squabbles about the recipes and origins. Cakes seem disproportionately to be the subject of such history construction compared to other foodstuffs. It is interesting to speculate why this might be, perhaps because cakes are portable, perhaps because they serve a number of meal functions. Whatever the reason, such legendary cakes carry much of the significatory function of cake as a concept.
So we have cake as a symbol, and then because it's a symbol, you know, people put their emotions and feelings and egos and things like that into it. You've got like folklore of cakes, kind of like how we talked about with donuts and other baked goods. You know, you have these origin stories. You have lawsuits around cakes. You know, you've got cake patents. You've got so many different types of cakes.
Yeah, we had the two guys fighting over who invented the chocolate lava cake before, you know?
Exactly. Cake is something that carries a lot of, I feel like, societal anxiety in a weird way.
Yeah. I think because it's connected with so many, which I think I'm peeking in the notes because we're going to talk about this in a second, that it is often the centerpiece of so many like celebrations and memories and major events in people's lives. I think that definitely has some, I would imagine it's maybe sort of like a cycle, you know, in the sense that like cake is important because it is served at these important events. But I've also heard like you can't have a party without cake. Like the cake makes it an important event, you know, and it sort of is like a cyclical nature, I would say.
Yeah, if you're having a celebration, you're having cake. And cake is there for a celebration. So like just like you said, it's a circular nature. And as always, like human celebrations or religious offerings or however you want to view them are already like high anxiety things, or like at least like high stress, high tension.
A lot of emotions.
A lot of emotion, like good ways and bad ways.
Yeah.
So, you know, all of that's being put onto cakes. And I think like a great example, and probably one of like the biggest examples, is the wedding cake.
Mm-hmm.
Like we talked about earlier, we have Queen Victoria and her tiers of cream and sugar and swirls of icing, all in a starch white hue, this giant ass cake. And as Mary Douglas, who was a British anthropologist who was known for her writings on human culture, remarked, she said, a competent young anthropologist arriving on this planet from Mars would be more struck by the rituals surrounding the cutting and distributing of wedding cake than he would be by a Japanese tea ceremony, and would be perhaps baffled to make up his mind whether the central focus of the ceremony was the marriage or the cake.
Having attended a formal Japanese tea ceremony, she has a point. Which, like, if you don't know, traditional Japanese tea ceremony is very ritualized in terms of, like,
yes,
you're supposed to take a certain number of sips from the cup. You're supposed to, like, the order in which people are served and the order or the arrangement of, like, how people are sitting around the tea kettle is important. And, like, there's a lot of symbolism. And meaning and stuff.
So, like, you know, the wedding cake is such an extreme part of a wedding. Like, Nicole, how many cakes did you taste for your wedding cake? Like, you go to cake tastings for this stuff, for Christ's sake.
I mean, we tried at least 3 different bakeries, and at each of those bakeries, we got multiple different types of cake. I mean, it is like such a focal point, you know? There's like a lot of photos that I have for my wedding, obviously, but one of the few ones that I have framed, because I only have so much room in my house, is us cutting the cake.
Yeah, that is a huge moment in most American weddings. I did not taste any cakes because, again, dairy allergy. I didn't really have samples to choose from. It was kind of like, please give me a cake that won't make my tummy hurt. Please. And they were like, okay, gonna cost you extra.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay. But I think, like, there's been, especially in the 2010s, there's this huge, like, decentralization around the wedding cake where, like, you got, like, the donut tower or, like, the cupcake tower.
I'm a big fan of a dessert table. I think we should be doing more of that. Just generally, I think we should just be having a dessert table.
I agree. I love a dessert table. But, like, you know, you have this tiered, you know, like, wedding cakes are supposed to be tiered cake that's, like, highly decorated, and, like, the bigger the better. The bigger the cake, it's like a, what's the word for it? A sign of wealth.
Like a status symbol?
A status symbol, yeah. It's like the bigger your cake, the higher your status, right?
Yeah.
Even though, like, the really big cakes are mostly fake cardboard, pretending to be cakes. And then, like, you have the moment where the couple cuts the cake, which is, like, changed sort of symbolically throughout time, where it was, like, previously in, like, the early 1900s, late 1800s, the bride would just cut the cake by herself.
Oh.
And then, like, you know, the husband joins her later in cutting the cake. You cut them together, and it's supposed to be like a symbol of, like, your relationship or whatever.
I know that, like, something my parents say every time we go to a wedding is, like, when the bride and groom, like, feed each other the first bite of cake. My mom is always like, ooh, is she gonna smush the cake into his face? Are they gonna be good? Are they gonna be nice? You know?
Yeah, and so there's just, like, a lot of ritual around the cake, just like Mary Douglas, another Mary, talks about, where it's like, you know, you have the cake rolled in or, like, displayed on its own table, and then traditionally, like, cakes would be, like, taken away to be cut up. You don't get to see, like, the actual cutting up of the cake, dissecting of the cake, and then it comes out, you know, like, on plates for people. There was, like, the whole show Cake Boss. Like, started out being wedding cakes. Like, there's just, like, so much emotion around the wedding cake.
I think we're forgetting the most important cake of all, which actually you have the before the wedding, which is the giant cake that the stripper jumps out of at the bachelorette
You're
party.
absolutely right. I forgot about that cake. No, it is, you know, physically large.
Yeah.
But, you know, you have cakes for any celebration. Like, I was reading the book by Nicola, and it was like, you have cakes for birthdays. You have cakes for funerals. You have cakes to celebrate the success of the Nazi party. There's a picture of that. You have a cake to celebrate a nuclear bomb test. There was a picture of that too. You have a cake for a baby shower or a bridal shower. You have cakes for, like, book releases. You have, like, a cake celebrating success in, like, the suffrage movement. You have cake for anything. You can have cake for anything that you want to celebrate. Like we said earlier, to celebrate, you have cake. So, finally getting to the second question I wanted to answer in this episode. Is cake gay?
Could be.
Stick with me for a second.
I'm with you. I'm interested. Yes, I'd like to know more.
So, what I mean by is cake gay, and I had to explain this to my husband because he is a straight man. It is not, is cake gay, parentheses, sexually. It is cake gay, parentheses, culturally. Is cake a cultural signifying symbol of queerness? So to answer that, you know, I think we kind of have to talk about, like, what is gay or queer food? Mm-hmm. And for this section, I read a book called What is Queer Food by John Birdsall. John Birdsall is a James Beard award-winning author, 2-time, and a former food critic and longtime restaurant cook and a gay man. So in his book, Birdsall talks about how there's no, like, specific queer cuisine. Like, there's no, like, one sort of like cultural cuisine that you can call queer. Just like how there's not like any one way to be queer, right? Like it is a very expansive group of people, which means that like the cuisine that we make is going to be expansive as well.
Sure.
So instead, queer food is like fuel for survival in a world that is constantly trying to erase you.
I'm snapping.
It is also a leveling ground where boys can bake cakes and women can carve the turkey at Thanksgiving. Queer food is reinvention and reclamation of foods that were once forbidden. As Birdsall opens in his book, food is part of a queer arc of survival, shared sustenance on the path that we and others like us kept open so that others could get safely through. Survival by the oppressed is itself a form of defiance, and the food that fuels it a means of resistance. Queer food is ordinary food transformed by context, part of a narrative of disobedience to become something with collective power.
Snapping. I've just been snapping at everything so far. I'm picking up what he's putting down.
So like, how does this relate to cake though, right? Is like the question everyone's probably asking. And so I argue that cake is gay culturally because it is for celebrations. And in its queerness, it is a reclamation of joy and things that were once withheld from queerness. So back to wedding cakes. Gay marriage wasn't legal nationwide until 2015. That's only 10 fucking years ago, right? And there have been cases, though fewer and fewer it seems in the US, of gay couples being denied wedding cakes from conservative bakeries or bakers. And so to have a wedding cake, to celebrate a marriage, is defiance and resistance. So you are taking the symbol of matrimony and you're claiming it for yourself. So it is a reclamation of something that was once forbidden to you. You do have the ability and the power to celebrate your love with the person that you are marrying through a wedding cake. You can have a wedding cake. The straights think it's overdone and lame now, but you can still have your cake. And I also think the same in the sort of like fuel for survival, and also in the sense of like staying alive in a world that doesn't want you alive in a lot of ways. You have birthday cakes celebrating every year you're still here, especially in the time like Birdsall talks about, like, because he lived through the AIDS epidemic and it took thousands of lives, right?
Yeah.
And he talks about how you literally did not know if you're going to survive the year as a gay man, or if like any of your friends and community, like if they would survive either. It was just that absolutely bleak.
Yeah.
And so like to celebrate another year of being alive, to celebrate like life and love, it's resilience and it's resistance, and cake is an avenue for that as well.
This is not a visual medium, but I was like jamming to what Julia was putting down earlier. It's very true. I think it's also true right now because it's rough out there and you always need to look for moments of joy. I would say the only other thing I have to add about cake being gay is noted drag queen Trixie Mattel has made quite a living for herself baking tiny cakes in easy bake ovens on YouTube. So there's that too.
I didn't even get into it, but we have the freaking rainbow cake, right? Like the literal rainbow layers of a cake. I'm just like, it's there, it's staring you in the face. So like, to sum up, cakes symbolize a lot of things. They can symbolize tradition, and they can also symbolize breaking that tradition or reclaiming that tradition as something as your own. But I think, as Lynn Alver of foodtimeline.org fame and founding sums it up in her very touching passage on the site. Nicole, could you read this final passage for us?
All-timer, foodtimeline.org. Where would we be without it? So she says, quote, "On the human level, cakes are served at special occasions, birthdays, weddings, holidays, funerals, because they represent our best culinary offering honoring our most loved people. In olden times, when refined sugar, spices, nuts, and dried fruit were expensive, it was an honor to be honored with cake. Today, cake isn't super expensive, and we have many choices: store-bought, box mix, scratch, bakery special order, but the message remains constant. Cake says, you're important, and we love you." I'm gonna cry a little bit, I think.
I know, it's so sweet.
I love that.
What is cake? Cake is love.
It is. Listeners, we love you, and you deserve cake, is what we're going to say. And that, I think, is how we should end the episode.
Yeah, end the episode on a loving note.
Yay.
This one's actually not depressing. Yay!
Thanks for lunching with us. And we'll see you next time.
See you next time. Bye!
Our theme music is Red Onions by Louis Zong. Please check out the rest of his album Vegetable Soul in the description. If you have an episode suggestion or want to say hi, you can email us at girlslunchpodcast@gmail.com. Thank you for listening. I was like, this is not meaningfully soup at this point.
This is just wet. It's just wet. Wet chunks.